Hello, welcome back to another time capsule countdown. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but with Christmas approaching, I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic for yesteryear. So this is a countdown of things that I enjoyed from Christmas when I was a child. I looked forward to. Some of them don't happen anymore. Some of them people take for granted. Maybe you don't, but this is what I like to share with you. So I wrote down it, obviously, so I don't lose anything. So I got my little Christmas list, if you will, of my favorite things. So I got them in order. We're going from number 10 all the way down to my favorite thing. Number 10 is a simple pleasure, but as a kid, it only came around at Christmas time. It was eggnog. So, just a seasonal drink, and it's a nice way to kind of like feel like it's Christmas time. I enjoy it. Some people are adamant against it, but that's how I feel. Number 9, my grandmother's old-fashioned holiday candy. Obviously, it wasn't hers. It was something she bought, but she always had it in a glass bowl, and you never knew what you're going to get. And actually, I'll be inserting pictures of stuff, to kind of like explain what it is. But this I found at Family Dollar, and I have some of it right here to show you kind of what she would have. It's this stuff. So it's old-fashioned mix. This is from Grandma May's Candy Dish. This is the brand of it. And there's, like, by looking at the colors, you never knew what you were going to get per se. Some of them you can kind of guess, but it was always like a little surprise. It was something that I enjoyed doing. I kind of like hover around that. And then she'd always have like a homemade Chex Mix before they started selling Chex Mix already seasoned. This was back in like the 80s. So she'd like homemade her own seasoned Chex Mix also to kind of go with that. So that's kind of like a notable mention to go with the candy dish also. Number 8, again, my grandmother DuPont, a lot of it will go back to her. She's, since passed on, but sweet potato casserole. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. I'll try to find screenshots of that. I also have a recipe of this dish somewhere, but right now like I've said previously, we're living with my brother-in-law, so a lot of stuff's in storage. We're renovating the house. I have a house renovation blog that explains what's going on. But it was, sweet potatoes. They were kind of like, almost like made like mashed potatoes. But there's brown sugar in there, walnuts, and it's seasoned and it's browned, and it was like crunchy yet, creamy. It was really good. I liked it as a kid, and I still like it today. Then number 7 is the yearly Christmas specials on TV. Growing up in the 80s and part of the 90s, there was no internet like we know nowadays. There's no streaming services. A lot of those Christmas specials, like Frosty, all those claymation ones, you couldn't find. Like, there'd be maybe VHSs of them, but even back then, VHS wasn't as predominant as it was later on in the 80s into the 90s. Then DVD took over, and now the streaming services. You can find that stuff year long. But those Christmas specials, I remember sometimes I'd go to bed and it'd be like a weekend. My mom would actually wake us up and say, "Hey, Frosty's on. You guys, want to get out of bed? You can, watch it if you want." And we would come downstairs and watch Frosty, and then go back to bed afterwards. It just, those kind of things, like, you can watch them now, so it almost dilutes the specialness of it, at least to me. Number 6, Christmas lights. I know it's simple, but like a vlog that you guys might have seen on my channel previously, Bryan, Ohio has where they light up their square around the old courthouse. I remember seeing those. My dad would take a special trip from Stryker, where we lived, go through Bryan, which was out of the way, just to see the lights on Christmas Eve, and go to my grandma DuPont's house in Defiance. There was also a street, like a little dead-end type street. This one guy started in the 80s, started decorating his house extravagantly. Like, his electric bill had to be ridiculous, but he'd have animatronic stuff out there. You know, stuff you'd see if you went to like a Christmas Wonderland place in a warehouse that had lights and everything all inside of it, and you had to pay money to get in. He'd have this in his yard. And then the other neighbors started decorating their houses. And I remember that being like a special time. Go and see those lights, everything lit up. It was, you know, it's just something that I looked forward to every year. And then, unfortunately, you know, everybody passes on. Once he passed on, that tradition kind of passed away with him. Number 5, Christmas break from school. What kid doesn't enjoy Christmas break from school? Like, that was something to look forward to, like all those extra days off, you know, staying up late, sleeping in, Christmas parties, Christmas get-togethers, presents, you know. And then as you get older, I actually enjoyed the giving of presents too, like picking out presents for my mom or my dad. I enjoyed that. Like, they give us so much money, we go do that. Number 4, getting the Sears Catalog in the mail. I don't think it actually came in the mail because it was like this thick. I'll show pictures, like I said. But back in the 80s, there really was no internet, like I've said, like there is nowadays. So you wouldn't know what toys, what video games, what things were coming out unless you were connected somehow. So you get that catalog and you open it to it, and it'd be like a little every kid's dreamland. You know, it'd have your favorite action figure line or whatever you're into, and they'd be like in some sort of diorama, and it'd be like, oh wow, that's coming out, because you wouldn't know what was coming out back then. Like, you didn't know what new version of He-Man or G.I. Joe, or, you know, if you're a female, My Little Pony or Barbie, you wouldn't know, like, she has a new Barbie Dream Camper 5000. You wouldn't know that unless you got this catalog. And that was like a awesome thing, because you get it and, you know, you'd look at it and you'd be like, wow, and you have to make kind of like a wish list out of it. All right, I gotta turn my page. Getting down to number 3. So I'm always been a video game nerd, you know, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, arcade games like beat 'em ups. But getting a game system, like a brand new game system, or maybe even a system that's been out a year, you get a year later because, you know, parents couldn't afford it the first year. And then the bundled in game that came with it, and playing that Christmas morning and the rest of Christmas break till you go back to school. I remember those days. So, you know, Super Nintendo was one of the ones we got. It was our very first big system we got as a kid. Before that, we had rented Nintendo from, like, there's like a gas station that a video store connected in Archibald, Ohio, that you could actually rent Nintendo systems, like the original Nintendo. And we would do that. And, like, my parents would rent that, and, like, by the time they rented it so much, they could have just bought us a Nintendo system. But then Super Nintendo came out, they bought us, the first year it came out, they bought us that. Came with Super Mario World. I just always equate Super Mario World with Christmas, because I got it on Christmas. And then the following year, we got the Genesis system, Sega Genesis, but it was like, had already been out previous to that, but they got us that. And it came bundled with Sonic. So then again, Sonic the Hedgehog, always thought of as kind of like playing it on Christmas. Brings back memories of Christmas. Number 2, making my Christmas list. What kid doesn't enjoy making the Christmas list? You know, you put on there, you know, anything that you wanted. Often I would utilize number, I gotta turn back to my previous page. I would utilize number, gotta read my handwriting. Number 4. There we go. I would utilize number 4, getting the Sears Catalog in the mail. So I would utilize that Sears Catalog and circle everything I wanted. You know, so I would write it down, but I would also circle like a picture, be like, you know, see Sears Catalog page whatever, so that my parents would know what I'm talking about. So I got the right version of He-Man or a G.I. Joe figure or a play set or whatever I wanted, I would utilize that Sears catalog. It's a nice handy tool. I just remember doing that, like, with marker, finding all the things I wanted. Usually it was a ridiculously long list, but I still would usually get something I wanted, if not everything I wanted, on my list, plus the usual socks and things I needed too. And then number 1 on my list, Christmas countdown, is Christmas Eve at my grandmother DuPont's house, because it kind of tied a lot of these things on my list together with that, and it was almost like a I don't know, kind of brought like the waiting for Christmas Day. It's like, oh, Christmas Day is tomorrow, but this is like a little foretaste of the feast to come. That's what it felt like. So you go there, you get some presents, usually something good that maybe, my parents couldn't afford that, plus the other stuff on my list. I got like Optimus Prime from the original Transformers line from my grandparents. That was quite expensive even when it first came out, in the 80s dollar amount. I had the Christmas candy there, the sweet potato casserole, the eggnog, a lot of those things. We see the Christmas lights going through Bryan on the way to Defiance. A lot of those things on my list ultimately culminated in my number 1, which was Christmas Eve at my grandmother's. If you guys, are nostalgic for Christmas of yesteryear, if you try to keep traditions that are going on nowadays, let me know in the comments what you remember of Christmas, what you enjoyed or what you miss, or maybe doesn't happen anymore. Or maybe you're like, you know what? I'm going to try doing that now because I miss that at Christmas. That's all I have for this one. Until next time, have a good night and take care.